Ryan's office revenge. I found out I'd been replaced by accident. Not in a meeting, not in a one-on-one, not even in one of those cheerful company emails where they pretend reorganization is about efficiency and growth. I found out because I did what I always do on Monday mornings. I checked my email to see the week's production schedule. Instead, I saw a message from corporate HR with the subject line Organizational Structure Update, effective immediately. My name is Patrick Sullivan. I'm 48 years old, and I've been working manufacturing operations for 22 years. This is how I learned that loyalty means nothing when corporate decides you're inconvenient. The strangest part is I didn't feel angry first. I felt embarrassed, like I'd been the only person who didn't get the joke. Because when a company wants to promote you, they tell you. When they don't, they let you keep working until you stop being useful. And I had been useful. Too useful for my own good. I work in operations for a mid-size automotive parts manufacturer. The kind that supplies GM and Ford with components that keep assembly lines running. I've been there 8 years, working my way up from production supervisor. I'm not the loudest guy in meetings, but I'm the one people call when a line shuts down and everyone else is arguing about who owns the fix. If a major contract is at risk, procurement calls me. If safety compliance is behind, they call me. If production misses delivery dates and no one wants to tell the plant director, my name shows up in the email thread. I liked being that guy. I built efficiency systems that saved the company $850,000 annually. I developed safety protocols that kept our incident rate 40% below industry standards. And when something went right, I didn't need applause. I just needed it to stay right. That's why the promotion felt inevitable. Not because I was entitled to it, because I'd already been doing the job. The conversation started right after quarterly reviews. Brian Hayes, my manager, asked me to step into his office with that energized calm managers get when they want you to feel grateful before they ask for more. "You crushed it," he said, sliding my performance summary across the desk. "You're operating at the next level." I scanned the page. Every metric was strong. Production efficiency up 15%, safety incidents down 40%, cost reduction targets exceeded by $300,000. It was the closest thing corporate manufacturing has to a love letter. Then he said it. "We're going to promote you to plant director soon." He didn't say we'll try. He didn't say I'll advocate. He said we're going to like it was a completed action that just hadn't caught up to the paperwork yet. I should have asked for a date. I should have asked what soon meant in company language. Next month, next quarter, or never. But I made the mistake competent people make when they trust a manager who sounds confident. I asked what he needed from me. Brian's face brightened like he'd been waiting for that exact question. "Keep doing what you're doing," he said, "and start acting like the director. Train the new supervisors. Own the weekly production review. Be the point person for procurement when contracts get messy. HR will process the paperwork in parallel." In parallel. That phrase is always the trap. So I did it. I stepped into the director role without the title. I ran the production review every week and took the heat when deliveries slipped. I coached 2 new supervisors through their first union negotiations, something that took me 15 years to learn properly. The union guys respected me because they knew I'd worked the floor before I wore a tie. I'd operated the same presses they did, dealt with the same safety hazards, understood why a 2-minute bathroom break wasn't negotiable when you're running 10-hour shifts. I built a comprehensive efficiency tracking system that people started referring to like it was company policy. I took late calls with procurement when our biggest automotive contract threatened to walk. I became the bridge between union floor workers who trusted me and corporate executives who needed results but had never touched a wrench. And Brian loved it because it made him look like a manager with a stable operation. Every time I checked in, I got a different version of soon. Compensation review is coming up. Corporate is tightening promotion bands this quarter. Plant leadership wants to align director roles with the restructuring. Don't worry, you're the plan. I didn't argue, I didn't complain, I just kept delivering because my brain kept translating soon into earned. Meanwhile, at home, the bills kept coming. My daughter Sarah's tuition at State was $18,000 a semester. My son Mike's engineering program cost even more. The mortgage on our house, the one we bought thinking I'd be making director money by now, wasn't getting any smaller. My wife Linda started asking questions I couldn't answer. When exactly is this promotion happening? Because the college payment is due next month and we're already stretched thin. I kept saying soon to her too, because that's all I had. Then Brian hired someone. He introduced Steven Rodriguez in a Monday stand-up with a bright smile and casual tone, like this was a normal hire that wouldn't touch anyone else's life. "Steven's joining us to help scale operations," Brian said. "He's going to take on some strategic coordination." Steven was polished, 42 years old, Northwestern MBA, confident voice, the kind of guy who says stakeholders without irony. He smiled at the camera and said he was excited to partner with everyone. After the call, Brian messaged me privately. "Steven's here to take administrative stuff off my plate. Doesn't change anything for you." That was the first time my stomach tightened. Not because Steven existed, but because Brian felt the need to reassure me before I even asked. Over the next couple weeks, small things shifted. Emails Brian used to forward to me, he forwarded to Steven. Meetings I used to be pulled into, Steven suddenly attended. I'd be halfway through explaining a production risk, and Brian would say, "Let's get Steven's eyes on this." I told myself it was fine. Scaling, right? Delegation, structure. But the union guys started noticing too. Tommy Kowalski, our shop steward who'd worked with me for 6 years, pulled me aside after a safety meeting. "What's the deal with the new guy?" he asked. "He keeps asking questions about things you already figured out 3 years ago." "He's getting up to speed," I said. Tommy looked at me like I was being naive. "Patrick, I've seen this before. They bring in someone from outside to do your job while keeping you around to train him. Then they thank you for your service." I didn't want to believe Tommy, but he'd been through 4 plant managers and 3 reorganizations. He knew the signs better than anyone. That's when I started doing something I'd never done before at work. I documented, not out of malice, out of self-respect. After every one-on-one where Brian said soon, I sent a short recap email. What we discussed, what I was taking on, what the expectation was. I phrased it professionally. I didn't accuse, I didn't demand. I just put reality into writing. Brian rarely replied, but he never corrected me either. And silence in corporate life is often the most convenient signature. By month 4, Steven was attending the executive production meetings I used to run. He'd sit there with his laptop, taking notes about processes I'd developed, asking questions about systems I'd built. The worst part wasn't that he was learning my job, it was that he was learning it wrong. One Tuesday, he suggested we could improve efficiency by reducing the pre-shift safety checks from 15 minutes to 10 minutes. I had to bite my tongue. Those extra 5 minutes had prevented 3 serious accidents in the past year. But when I tried to explain, Brian cut me off. "Steven brings a fresh perspective," he said. "Sometimes we get too attached to the way we've always done things. Too attached. Like 22 years of experience was a character flaw." At home, the pressure was building. Linda found the college payment notice on my desk and asked the question I'd been dreading. Patrick, if this promotion doesn't come through, what's our backup plan? I didn't have a good answer. We'd already refinanced the house once. Our savings account was down to $3,200, barely enough for emergencies, let alone next semester's tuition. I'd been counting on the director's salary to fix everything. Now I was starting to realize I'd been counting on a lie. Maybe I should look for something else, I said. Linda sat down next to me, that look on her face she gets when she's about to say something I won't like. Patrick, you've been with this company for 8 years. You know that plant better than anyone. If they don't see your value, maybe it's time someone else did. She was right. But leaving felt like admitting defeat. I'd invested too much to walk away. At least that's what I told myself. By month 5, I'd stopped feeling excited about Monday mornings. I felt suspended, like I was holding a heavy box while someone kept saying just a second and walking farther away. Stephen was now copying me on emails that used to be addressed to me directly. Small shift, big message. The breaking point came during our monthly safety audit. The state inspector was doing his annual review, and I'd prepared everything: documentation, compliance records, corrective action reports. I knew the regulations inside and out. I'd been dealing with OSHA standards since before Stephen graduated college. But when the inspector arrived, Brian introduced him to Stephen as our operations director. Not me. Stephen, who 3 months earlier had wanted to cut safety check time. I stood there watching Stephen try to explain our lockout/tagout procedures I'd written, while getting half the details wrong. The inspector kept looking at me like he expected me to jump in. Finally, I did. Actually, I said, let me clarify the sequence on the hydraulic isolation. I walked the inspector through the real procedure, showed him the documentation, explained why each step mattered. The inspector nodded, made notes, asked follow-up questions that Stephen couldn't answer. By the end, it was clear who actually ran safety compliance. After the inspector left, Brian pulled me aside. That was good work, he said, but going forward, let's make sure Stephen takes the lead on these interactions. That sentence hit me like a punch. Good work, but stay quiet. Know your place. That night, I did something I should have done months earlier. I opened my laptop and started updating my resume, not because I was ready to leave, but because I needed to see my worth written down in black and white. 22 years of experience, $850,000 in verified cost savings, 40% safety improvement, 0 lost time accidents in 3 years, training record that. Training included 15 supervisors who'd moved up to management. On paper, I looked pretty valuable. It made me wonder why Brian was having such a hard time seeing it. The Friday before everything changed, Brian looked me in the eye and said, "Hold tight. Next cycle. It's locked." He said it with the confidence of a man who'd checked all the boxes and filed all the paperwork. I went home that night and told Linda we could start planning for Sarah's spring semester. I should have known better. I should have learned by then that locked didn't mean what normal people think it means. Monday morning, I sat down, opened my laptop, and clicked my email like I always did. The message from corporate HR loaded slowly. Subject line: Organizational structure. Update: Effective immediately. The message was cheerful in that corporate way that makes your skin crawl. A few lines about alignment, scalable leadership, and clarifying ownership. Attached was the new org chart. And right above my name, where my promotion was supposed to appear, was Stephen Rodriguez, Operations Director. My title unchanged, my responsibilities unchanged. Just my future quietly reassigned. I stared at that chart for a full minute, letting it sink in. Then I picked up my phone and called in sick. Not because I was sick, but because I needed time to think without Brian's voice in my ear telling me this was all perfectly normal. Linda took one look at my face when I walked back into the kitchen, and knew. They gave it to someone else, didn't they? I showed her the org chart. She studied it for a moment, then set down her coffee harder than necessary. "That's it," she said. "You're done playing their game." I waited until Tuesday to go back to work. Not long, just long enough to see if Brian was going to do the adult thing and call me first. He didn't. So I booked a meeting myself. 15 minutes. Title: Quick Sync. Neutral words, because the moment you sound emotional, people stop listening and start labeling. When I walked into his office, he was already sitting back in his chair like he'd been expecting me. His laptop was open. His coffee was full. He looked calm. That calm told me something before he even spoke. He had known, he had planned for this, and he had decided I didn't deserve a heads up. "Hey," he said, friendly, like we were about to talk about production schedules. I didn't sit down right away. I opened my laptop and angled it so he could see the org chart without me having to narrate it. "I saw the update," I said. His eyes flicked to the screen. He paused for half a second, just long enough to confirm he couldn't pretend. "Yeah," he said. "So about that. It's just structure." "Structure is my reporting line," I replied. "I report to Stephen now." Brian gave a small shrug. "Stephen's going to coordinate some cross-functional work. Titles aren't everything." I felt irritation flare, but I kept my voice flat. "Titles mattered when you asked me to do director work." He leaned forward slightly, like he was going to talk me down from a ledge. "Patrick, don't take it personally. This is about scaling. Stephen has experience in formalizing programs. You're still on track." I stared at him. "When were you going to tell me?" "We were going to talk this week," he said quickly. "Today is Tuesday," I replied. He nodded like he'd heard a fair point, then immediately tried to smooth it over. Things moved faster than expected. That sentence was the moment I stopped hoping this was an accident. Things don't move fast without intent. Someone had hit approve. Someone had decided the org chart could change before the conversation. I took a breath and did the one thing he wasn't expecting. I pulled up my notes. I didn't call them receipts. I didn't say I was documenting him. I just opened a simple file. Dates, meeting titles, what he said, what he asked me to do. "You told me you were promoting me," I said. "You told me soon. You told me to act like the director. You told me Friday it was locked for was next cycle." Brian's face tightened. It wasn't panic. It was irritation, like he didn't like the version of me that could remember. He tried to shift the conversation into vague leadership language. "You're valuable," he said. "But leadership is more than execution. It's presence. It's stakeholder management. It's—" "I have been managing stakeholders," I cut in, still calm. "You just called it helping you scale." Brian exhaled slowly like I was being unreasonable. "Okay, let's not spiral. Let's focus on what we can control." "Great," I said. "Put it in writing." He blinked. "What?" "Put in writing what you're offering," I said. "Title, timeline, compensation band. If I'm still on track, define the track." His jaw flexed. "We can't always put timelines on these things." "You did," I said. "You called it soon." The room went quiet. I could feel the power shift. Small, but real. Because now he wasn't talking to a grateful employee. He was talking to someone treating his words like commitments. Brian tapped, his pen on the desk, thinking, then reached for the safe exit. "Let me talk to HR. We'll circle back." I nodded. "One more thing." He looked up, wary. If Stephen is my lead, I said, then I need clarity on my responsibilities. I'm not doing unpaid director work while someone else holds the title. If I'm a senior manager, I'm going to operate like one. Brian's tone sharpened. That's not the attitude we need. I'm not changing my attitude, I said. I'm changing my boundaries. I left his office before he could turn it into a debate. An hour later, Stephen sent a calendar invite to the whole operations team. Alignment and ownership review, friendly agenda, corporate optimism. I joined on time, camera on, expression neutral. Stephen smiled at me like we were partners. Excited to work with you, Patrick, he said. Likewise, I replied. Stephen started walking through a new operating model. New rhythms, new check-ins, new terminology. Nothing outrageous except the part where he shared his screen and pulled up a spreadsheet. My spreadsheet. Same layout, same formulas, same efficiency calculations that saved the company $850,000, except my name wasn't anywhere on it. Stephen talked over it like it had always been his tool, like it had just appeared in his world fully formed. I let him speak for a few seconds, long enough for everyone to see it. Then I said, politely, "Before we move on, I want to correct something." Stephen paused. Brian's eyes narrowed slightly. "That efficiency system was created by me," I said, calm and direct. "It's been driving our production reviews since we implemented the cost reduction program. If we're going to use it as a team artifact, I need the attribution restored and the edit rights clarified. Otherwise, we end up with multiple versions and no accountability." The call went quiet in that way, where you can almost hear people thinking, "Oh, so that's what this is." Stephen cleared his throat. "Yeah, of course. No problem. Brian shared it with me. Great work." Brian forced a smile. "Good call. Let's keep momentum." I nodded like I was agreeing, but inside, something shifted, because it wasn't just that they replaced me. It was that they were already trying to erase me. Quietly, politely, with my own work on someone else's screen. That afternoon, I did something that wasn't emotional at all. It was practical. I stopped operating like a man waiting to be chosen and started operating like a man gathering options. I called my old supervisor from the previous company, Jerry Martinez, who'd moved to a German automotive supplier. "Patrick," he said when he picked up, "I was just thinking about you. How's that promotion coming along?" "That's actually why I'm calling," I said. "It's complicated." Jerry laughed. "In my experience, when someone says promotion is complicated, it means someone's playing games. You still interested in real opportunities?" That conversation lasted 20 minutes. By the end, Jerry had given me 3 names of headhunters who specialized in automotive operations roles. "Companies are desperate for people with your experience," he said. "Real floor-to-management experience, not just MBA theory." 2 days later, the safety incident happened. A hydraulic press malfunction on second shift that could have killed someone if the emergency protocols hadn't worked perfectly. The kind of incident that triggers federal investigations and massive lawsuits if not handled properly. I found out about it the same way I'd learned about my non-promotion. By accident. A text from Jennifer Martinez, our GM procurement director. "Is the line back up? We need delivery confirmation by noon, or we're looking at contract penalties." I called the plant floor immediately. The situation was contained, but barely. Stephen had been briefed by corporate, but he was focused on production recovery, not safety compliance. The documentation was incomplete. The root cause analysis was surface level, and the corrective action plan would never satisfy OSHA if they decided to investigate. This was where 22 years of experience mattered. This was where you couldn't fake it with an MBA and good intentions. I spent my weekend, my own time, building a comprehensive incident report that covered every angle OSHA would examine. Proper root cause analysis, corrective actions with timelines, prevention measures, and compliance documentation. I knew the regulations because I'd been dealing with them for 22 years. Stephen had his MBA, but he'd never faced down a federal safety inspector. The hydraulic system had failed because of a maintenance oversight, specifically a scheduled inspection that got delayed during our efficiency improvements last month. The same efficiency improvements Stephen had championed without understanding the safety implications. The press operator, Maria Santos, had followed protocol perfectly. She hit the emergency stop, initiated lockout procedures, and evacuated the area. But if those protocols hadn't worked, we'd be dealing with a fatality instead of a near miss. Monday morning, I sent the report to the safety committee and copied the plant director. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Not Stephen, not Brian, the plant director himself. "Patrick, I need you in my office, now." When I walked in, the corporate compliance officer was there, the legal counsel was there, and my report was on the screen. "This is excellent work," the plant director said. "How did Stephen miss these compliance gaps?" I didn't throw Stephen under the bus. I didn't need to. I simply answered the question. "Different experience base," I said. "Safety compliance requires specific knowledge that takes years to develop. The maintenance scheduling conflict, the documentation requirements, the regulatory timeline, those aren't things you learn in business school." The compliance officer nodded grimly. This could have saved us $12 million in penalties and legal fees. The original report would have been insufficient for OSHA. They'd have shut us down for 6 months minimum. That afternoon, I got a call from one of Jerry's headhunter contacts. A German automotive parts company was looking for a VP of operations for their U.S. division. Someone had recommended me, someone who knew about the safety incident and how I'd handled it. The compensation was $220,000 plus equity plus international assignments. No soon, no parallel processing, just a formal offer with specific terms. I took the meeting. The next day, Brian called me into his office again. This time he looked nervous. "Patrick, we've been thinking. Maybe we moved too fast on the structure. Maybe we can adjust Stephen's role and get you that director position." I listened politely. Then I said, "Put it in writing. Title, compensation, timeline, reporting structure. If you want me to consider staying, I need the same level of detail you'd give any external candidate." Brian's face went through several expressions before settling on resignation. "I'll see what I can do." But we both knew it was too late. That Friday, I submitted my resignation, effective in 3 weeks, to allow for proper transition. No drama, no speeches, just facts. The German company announced my hiring the following Monday. VP of Operations, North American Division. The press release mentioned my 22 years of manufacturing experience and expertise in safety compliance and operational efficiency. Brian was reassigned to regional supervisor 2 weeks after I left. Stephen was transferred to corporate strategy, away from operations. The plant director called me personally to say the door was always open, but we both knew some bridges only get crossed once. My transition was thorough. I built the most comprehensive handover document of my life, not just bullets, but a real operating manual. What was in flight? What was at risk? Who owned what? Why decisions had been made? Where the problems were buried, professionally speaking, with dates and context. I linked the efficiency tracking system. I documented the safety protocols. I attached the latest OSHA compliance reports. Tommy Kowalski, the shop steward, pulled me aside on my last day. "You're leaving because of politics, aren't you?" he said. "I'm leaving because I'm worth more than what they were willing to pay," I replied. He nodded once. That's the smartest thing anyone said around here in months. Before I walked out, I had one last conversation with the union floor supervisor who'd worked with me for 8 years. Patrick, he said, you trained half the supervisors in this plant. You saved our jobs during the 2020 down. You made this place safer for everyone. Don't let them make you think you didn't matter. That hit harder than any insult Brian could have thrown at me, because it reminded me that value isn't determined by the person withholding recognition. It's determined by the people whose lives you actually touch. 6 months into my new job at the German company, I got a LinkedIn message from Jennifer Martinez, the GM Procurement Director. Heard about your new role. Congratulations. Any chance your new company needs automotive contracts? We're looking for suppliers who understand quality and reliability. I laughed out loud. Because the truth is, they didn't lose me the day the org chart changed. They lost me the day they chose convenience over honesty. And now they were learning what soon costs when the person holding everything together stops believing it. The German company culture is different. When they say promotion track, they show you the requirements and timeline. When they say soon, they mean 3 to 6 months, not whenever we feel like it. When they value your experience, they pay for it up front, not promise it later. At 48, with a mortgage and 2 kids in college, I thought I was too old to start over. Turns out, I wasn't too old. I was too experienced to be taken for granted. Linda was right that night when she said maybe it was time someone else saw my value. The hard part wasn't leaving the company. The hard part was admitting I'd wasted 6 months believing people who had already decided not to keep their word. Here's what I learned. When someone keeps saying soon about your career, they're actually saying never in a way that keeps you working for free. When they bring in someone from outside to do your job while keeping you around to train them, they're not scaling. They're replacing. And when they act surprised that you documented their promises, they're telling you everything you need to know about how they view accountability. The safety incident showed me something else important. Competence isn't about having the right degree or saying the right words. It's about knowing what matters when things go wrong. 22 years of experience isn't something you can fake with an MBA and good intentions. And when people's lives are on the line, there's no substitute for actually knowing what you're doing. I still talk to some of the union guys. The plant is running fine, but they've had 3 safety incidents since I left. Nothing major, but enough to keep OSHA interested. Stephen lasted 8 months in operations before they moved him to corporate. They hired my replacement from the outside, a guy with 15 years of automotive experience who asked for $20,000 more than what they'd been refusing to pay me. Sometimes the system corrects itself. Just not always when you're still part of it. The biggest mistake I made wasn't trusting Brian for 6 months. It was thinking I needed his permission to know my own worth.